Okay, welcome to this session of screenwriting, and I'm going to talk about how family history could be used in order to develop screenplay writing ideas. Um, so let's look at the points. The first one is just start. So it doesn't matter how far behind you feel you are in capturing your personal history. Start somewhere and start today. It's something that I would reiterate drawing from the last session itself, that you might find it difficult whenever you want to start developing ideas which could be converted into screenplay. But what is crucial is a start. So if you start somewhere and start today, wherever you are, and you continue to do so, after a certain point in time, you would have some material or the other. It might or might not make sense, but it would help you navigate through quite a bit of experiences by the time you wind up. So even if you don't have time to delve deeply into the past right now, make a regular habit of capturing and collecting current thoughts and memories. And current thoughts and memories could be around, the families, could be around the experiences you have gathered as a collective. It could be a vacation that you would have taken along with your parents or your siblings or cousins, or a trip to some historical place. So it depends on how we look at it. So the most important thing is to capture them while they're still fresh, because you would have a lot of fresh memories. So you can write about them and neatly organize them and rearrange your memories later. But first thing is to pen things down. That's why I said that maintaining a regular journal, if you want to become a successful screenwriter, would be important if you want to develop narratives which could be drawn from your family history or from family history of your extended family, or people that whom you know of. So I'll give you a small example here. I have a story that I wrote long back. It's about a second-hand bookseller. Okay, and this I could do so because of my experience of going to a lot of second-hand bookshops and spending quite a lot of time. And this is something that I had been doing since class 7th or 8th. And till now also, if I find an interesting small second-hand bookshop, I go there and chat with the bookseller or try to browse through the books he or she has to offer. So I have like very clear, vivid memories of my childhood around those second-hand bookshops in the town I grew up in, and later on where I went to study. During my graduation years, I would spend quite a lot of time at different small, bookshops, which would have pulp fiction, which would have old magazines around sport, because I was interested in cricket, writing, um, different kind of drama stories, so on and so forth. What would happen is, because I've spent so much of time around with those people, I have some sort of um, memories of them, which I could convert into characterial traits and put that together. So when I started writing or developing this story about the second-hand bookseller, there are multiple second-hand booksellers whose characterial traits I have noticed or had penned down in my diaries, which would eventually come in. So arranging your memories of a particular event or people or a place might happen later, but capturing them and writing them. Now you can do videos and record them and keep it. So it works as a visual archive for you. At that point in time, when I was growing up, there was no concept of smartphones. So if I had to, you know, write about something, I have to go back in memory. And I was somebody who maintained journals, but it was not written back in the day, keeping this thing in mind that I want to develop a story going forward about the second-hand bookseller. So when I thought that okay, maybe I should get started with this, I had those memories or things to look forward to in the journal that was written 10 years or 12 years back. So what is crucial is getting started. Then make a list of stories you want to tell. Not sure where to start with your personal or family history? Start by making a list of stories you want to write down eventually. Okay, you can talk to your parents, you can talk to your grandparents, you can talk to your grandparents' friends, you can talk to your parents' friends and say that, okay, how they were in college or how they were in school. For example, you were meeting, you know, your mom's friend or your dad's friend in some gathering, and they're just breaking into some lighthearted conversation about their childhood. So if you are present there, you're witnessing that conversation or you're hearing that conversation, it gives you some sort of an understanding about how your dad was from another person's point of view. You know, it always adds layers to the characterization process. Then you can elaborate on each of these stories one by one. While once you have the list of stories that you want to tell, drawing from your family history, then you can elaborate or expand upon them. Then think about the anecdotes you find yourself telling over and over, like a disaster you narrowly avoided, that crazy coincidence, and that one time you ran into a famous person. If anyone ever says, yeah, you told me that one before, that's a clue that the story is important to you. Then you may add it to your list. And this is something that happens. You know, I'll give you a very funny example. I have told so many examples over the years of teaching 10 years across classes. Must have been 1,000 odd students I would have taught by now. So whenever I am drawing examples or illustrations from my own life, there could be a possibility of repetition. Um, you might find it boring, but the thing is, it keeps try to understand, try to empathize with the person who is trying to tell that story. Here in this case, I'm trying to use this as an illustration to tomorrow. If you are a screenwriter and you want to do so, if you are telling this story over and over to different people without being conscious of the fact that you are repeating, then somewhere in your memory that story is clearly paced out. So that part stays, and that's crucial. So add that to your list of stories that you want to navigate through or you want to talk about. Okay. The next point is chronology. Okay. I have told you that try to pen things down in the timeline that you want to create. Also, I would like to say or add on that forget about a chronological process of events, because many a times it would be difficult to or boring sometimes to proceed with what your life story has been in a chronological fashion, or your family's history has been in a chronological fashion. Another example that I can think of before I talk about other points is this interesting project that I did a couple of years with one batch of students in another college. And I was teaching media history at that point in time. And I said that, I'm giving you a project to the students, that I'm giving you a project where you have to trace media history in a reverse chronological order. And it makes sense. It makes sense when you are going to study media history here. You have a few of your seniors who have studied media history, and you're going to study media history in the second semester, the first years I'm referring to. Um, Now, when you are trying to do a reverse chronological assessment of the media history, then what would happen is you are following the most recent media developments or the developments that has occurred in the world of media, things that you have experienced. So for you, because you have experienced things firsthand, your memories of those things or those events are going to be far more clear than about things that occurred 40 years back or 50 years back or 100 years back. So when you trace back, backwardly and proceed, um, what would be interesting is you find the most relevant information or the most current information aged in your memories. So even if you are, forgetting few things or dropping few things from the past, you might not miss out much unless you are a media historian or you are writing a book, especially for educational purpose or for the purpose of exams, or to know what has happened, events world over had changed um, the perspectives around the world, um, by looking at different inventions and discoveries around media. The reverse chronological order would help you. follow this. Now I'm bringing in this illustration, sorry, or this conversation because I want you to follow the similar sort of um, structure here as well, and it might help you. You know, you can use a timeline for reference only, and then write your stories in any order that you want. You want to proceed with the family tree. Okay, all of us are familiar with the concept of family tree. So maybe 2 generations, 3 generations, as backwardly as you can, and then start developing or writing anecdotes or stories that you hear from your grandparents or your parents about their fathers or their mothers, or the places where they grew up with, or the schools they went to, or the kind of struggles and difficulties they encountered or faced during that times, and start penning them down. So, or you can start from your life and trace it back accordingly. So, how so you want to do it? After all, you don't want to remember your life in chronological order. Most of the times we don't want to, unless our memories are memories, you know, bring out those kind of random um, triggers. As you write your stories down, you can add whatever structure to your memories you want. However you want to do that. People doodle, people sketch things, or sometimes people write pointers, people make journals. So whatever is convenient for you. Like I have a diary in which I write about characters. Write about characters. I keep developing characters, not necessarily stories. You know, like I told you, there's quite a bit of fluidity in that sense. I can take characters from here and there. I have a couple of stories lined up. I try to play around with those characters, so add layers to those characters. But unless I come up with an interesting trait to those characters, it might not, you know, be helpful in developing them. So you can leave all the memories that you have in a random order, group them later on by person or place, however you want to do that. So you can talk about Hyderabad, 2010 to 2020, all the people that you have interviewed, or all the people you have spoken to, or their histories, including yourself, in one way. Or you can make folders. Um, you know, it could be mother, father, grandparents, siblings, however you want to do that, and draw from that. You know, when we talk about family history, this is what makes it interesting. There are things that might have happened when your dad was 17 or your mom was 18. It could be any kind of things that could, you know, navigate you through any kind of genre. It could be romantic, it could be horror, it could be some kind of paranormal experiences that they would have had when they went on a trip or something like that. So conversations or talking to people matters, you know. And then once you have stories aged out, then you can just proceed accordingly. Then use memory triggers. What are memory triggers? Images could be beautiful memory triggers. It can help you look back at stories because there is some sort of a physical evidence of the existence of people in whatever ways. Then old cassettes, you don't belong to the cassette era, but we are, and the audio files recorded on CDs or cassettes, um, or songs. Songs are songs that I have recorded. I used to curate my own playlist and then record it, you know, on cassettes and play it on Walkman. So those are the memories that you would have. Then old clothes or any object that can work as wonderful memory triggers. You went on a trip, that that can bring you some sort of memories about that place. So looking through photo albums at relatives' home and see what stories come to your mind. You know, you have gone to your aunt's place and see showing some sort of a photograph, some set of images about your maternal grandmother's early days. You know, those sort of things. You don't know what is going to give you some story, and then you can look at that and you can talk to your grandmother if she is alive. Um, to, you know, get started with one conversation. So conversations are lying around. It's just that we need to initiate them and then soak in those experiences. Then plan a visit to a neighborhood or a city where you once lived. Go back and see what has changed in time. It happens to us so many of us, so many times. Every time I go once in a year to my hometown and I see so many things change. So the place where I have grown up, if I go there, there'll be so many memories that I would have of my childhood. So walk around maybe with a notebook or a camera, whatever helps to document, and you would find memories surface. Then you can use questions or writing prompts to trigger those memories and stories much later. Next point is let your thoughts percolate. It's hard to summon stories on demand. Okay, if I just tell you, okay, tell me about your class 7 experience. Unless that class 7 experience something that extremely is in your memory, you might not be able to immediately tell me what the story is or what sort of story you're looking at. So our memories just don't work that way. Okay, that you're not Sherlock. None of us are Sherlock. That we can just move, or we don't have that kind of high um, IQ that we can just go into the memory box and open a particular information and send it across. No, doesn't work that way. So if you're using writing prompts or trying to answer a list of questions, read through them at the beginning of the week, and then throughout the week, then kind of set them aside and go on about your life. You'll be surprised what you can remember after you let a question marinate in your mind for a few days. And this is what many times we tend to do. I take go for long walks, or early mornings are great times for me to go through those experiences. So you begin consciously, you begin with some sort of a thing that you want to recollect and try to keep thinking about it throughout the week and keep it somewhere in the back of your mind. When I go for a run or I go for a walk, or I'm simply washing utensils in the kitchen, those things keep hobnobbing in your mind. And sometimes you can just come up and pin those things down so that it stays. Many times, because we are navigating through so many things, we might tend to forget. Then use your handwriting, something that I was telling the first years this morning, that you tend to have forgotten probably how handwritten notes look like. I'm somebody who is a generation old that way, and I follow that old school of writing things on pen and paper. Thoughts and ideas do not come to my mind if I don't write on pen and paper. And those who are familiar with my writing, the second years and the final years, they know how bad my handwriting is, but I refuse to let go of it. Even if it is bad or whatever, I tend to write rather than type, though typing is way more easier. Let me just ask you this. Have you ever encountered a recipe written in your grandmother's hand and thought anything other than, wow, I miss her? If your grandmother is not around or your grandfather is not around, and they have left some sort of handwritten note there, those handwriting always remain as a museum, as a museum of material memory to you. And I have some of my grandfather's writings, handwritten ones, notes, with me, and then whenever I look at them, they give me a sort of a happy feeling about the gentleman who was there, who existed, or who had such a beautiful handwriting and something that is extremely unique to him. Then your family will want to have some of your words written in your own hand. They might not just judge you for imperfect handwriting or a sloppy handwriting. The things that you've written many times, that would be treasured by your parents or your elder siblings as a piece of you, or as a part of you. This is how we also tend to create memories. Keeping those things in mind, try to use your handwriting while developing those sort of notes. There's a very interesting documentary I would like to mention here. Um, this film, I am forgetting the title of the film. It's about Richard Linklater, the American filmmaker who made Boyhood and the Sunset Sunrise trilogy. And I was watching this documentary about him, and then where he showed in his office, cartons. There are two cartons full of journals that he had written, and it has characters, it has things that every experience that he wanted to share with the world. Uh, he had just penned down, and there are extreme close-up shots of those things, and he is going through journal by journal, year after year. There's so many things that he has written about. So there are so many interesting things about your own life that you don't tend to share. And I'm not saying share it with the world right in one go, but try to recollect, try to keep it. Things which are interesting about you, interesting about your families. And when I say interesting, doesn't necessarily in a fashionable way or in an entertaining way. You want to engage with the audience. There are several ways of engaging with the audience. That's why we have 9 rasas. We don't look at just one rasa and say that our story is built around that one rasa. Okay, though it could be a dominant one as well. But since we look at many rasas and many emotions and all, there are different memories that can get triggered, or people can engage or relate to different kind of experiences, which you might think could be ordinary. It might be extraordinary for somebody else. The next point is write the way you speak. Forget about formality and the rules of writing. Okay, just do your best to allow your authentic voice to shine through. Because remember, it's your family history you are talking about. It's your narrative that you want to talk about. So the more authentic is the voice, is the one that follows the heart. So the more your written words reflect the way you speak, the better it is. Okay, so most of the times you don't calculate and speak. You speak um, because you want to share a piece of your mind at that point in time. Okay, so write it the way you would converse. You would have a free flow conversation with a dear friend. So it can take years even for professional writers to find their own voice and feel truly at home with their style. So do not worry if you feel awkward with the writing at first. And it can happen to all of us. When you're writing, we might not think that this is a material worth reading, that why am I writing this, who would be interested to read or see. Because when we talk about screenwriting, we also need to keep in mind that we are possibly looking at people, right? People who might be better intellectually placed than us, or who might judge us. All those things are a possibility. I'm not denying any of those things, but do keep this thing in mind that that is your voice, and you need to talk it out. And over a period of time, you would feel that the most unique thing about the way you speak or you write is something that can be marketed. So it depends on how you want to tell your stories. At one point in time, when you look at the Harry Potter series, it could be just a fantastic novel. Um, there are so many fantastic novels that are there, fantasy based. So fantastic, I'm not talking in terms of a superlative, you not using it here as a superlative, but just as a fantasy based novel. There's so many people working on it. With the style and the characters and the settings and the emotions that Harry Potter brings in, I have come across so many people, especially my old students, who say that Harry Potter, the narrative or the books, has given courage to people to fight back, to look at the world in different perspectives. I don't know how many of you feel the same way, but so creating relatable content, you don't know who your audience is. Over a period of time, you'll be able to find out who your audience is and how to navigate through those audience. Um, because they would tend to like. So to begin with, just write. Okay, write the way you would speak your mind. Then make it a regular practice. The more you exercise your writing muscles, the easier and more naturally your words will flow. And this is something that is fundamental to any kind of writing. If you want to become a fast-paced screenwriter, then write as much as you can. There's this filmmaker from the Hindi film industry. His name is Anurag Kashyap. Um, so those of you who are familiar with his work, or if you have seen his interview, most of the times, if he's talking about screenwriting, he would say that he was one of the most fastest writers in the industry. The reason why he could get work and he could continue in his journey of success or progress is because he could write fast. That was his quality that he developed. He can write 100 pages in a day or two. Imagine 100 handwritten pages in a day or two, purely fiction-based material. So what would happen is, I'm not asking you to write 100 pages to begin with, but at least start with 5 pages or 10 pages and keep writing as much as you can. So at one point in time, what would happen is you would have quite a bit of interesting, overwhelming material, um, and you can decide whether you want to write once a week, or you want to write um, every day, or you want to write once a month or twice a month. So depending on when you want to write, or maybe write briefly. So there are several writing rituals that people follow, but whatever it is, one thing is for sure, that you need to be regular and disciplined around it. Do what you have to do to remove every kind of barriers that are holding you back, and make journaling fit your lifestyle. Even if that means carrying a small journal in your purse, or writing, an entire journal in a notes file of a smartphone. Now everybody is carrying a phone. People use that. Like for example, I use Instagram as a timeline of memories. More or less. So apart from that, I handwrite my things. So I'm playing with images and words constantly, and try to, over a period of time, have sort of an archive of images, an archive of um, text and visual materials that I could navigate through whenever I want to create some sort of material or the other. And those things can be great reference points for all of us whenever we tend to tell stories of different kind. We can always go back, revisit them, and do so. Now, what are the write-in list that you can come up with? The write-in list could have all these things. So it can help you break things down, and it could be easier to write and more fun to read those people who are reading. This is not the end of the list. Okay, you can come up with your own list. These are things that is interesting for me. I put it. You can come up with more additions as and when you proceed. So here are the brief list of things you could make a list about in your journal. Cities you have lived in, wherever, if you have traveled cities or changed cities because your parents or your guardians are in transferable jobs, or you have changed cities because of education. Then schools you would have attended over a period of time. If it is not one school, if it is one school, describe your school and the kind of school experience that you would have had over a period of time. Then the songs that would remind you of your high schools. And those songs would always be special because it would be associated with some sort of special memories or other. Could be, night outs at friends' places, or traveling to a certain place on school excursions or school picnics, or your first, you know, either experience of falling in love or heartbreak or whatever it is during your high school era. If that thing still happens, then your favorite books and movies of that period or time, then quotes or sayings that your grandparents always said, this way or that way, that can add to, or that adds to some sort of a characterial trait. Then traits you inherited from your grandparents. Whenever you visit villages, if you have experiences of visiting villages, you would see that people tend to say that, okay, he or she has brought this character from his or her grandparent, or grandparents for that matter. So at a surface level, it might be amusing to you, but then you think about it. It can be an interesting experience to share in a story. Then recipes that remind you of home. If you are in a city where you are away from parents, you have to cook yourself and fend for yourself. Um, or you go to a friend's place and you had something and that reminded you of your mom, or your brother or your sister, anybody who cooks for that matter, similar to that recipe that reminds you of home. Try to write those things down. If tomorrow you want to make a food narrative or food-based story, that can be an interesting addition or a perspective to that. Then personal injuries and hospitalization. Like, people remember accidents quite strongly if it would have happened to you or the dear ones, and hospitalization visits, things that you like to add on. Then childhood mischief that you got away with without getting beaten up or without being yelled at. Those are funny things that, kind of adds value to your childhood and makes it an enriching one. Then pets, your family owned pets who are still there, pets who are not there, writing about them, um, or sharing those images. So in the journal, you can probably take a snapshot of that pet that you have had who is not around and try to write. It can come in terms of a prose piece, it can come in terms of an article that you want to share, a non-fiction one, or it could be poetry, depending on whatever you want. So uh, break the format in that sense and write regardless of what comes out of it. Just write. And these are the set of things that I thought I could share so that it could help you, you know, get some sort of an understanding about the things that can make interesting journal entries. Okay, so this is more or less what I wanted to talk about when looking for ideas within the family history, what sort of things or what sort of features or elements can come in terms of your screenplay. Also remember that these are the things that would be dramatized later. I am talking about the source material. I'm talking about creating and recreating source materials, drawing from your own lives or your family histories, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm stopping here.